Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us here today to discuss team functioning. We understand that you are interested in optimizing the performance of your organization's teams and are primarily focused on the aspect of high-performing virtual teams. Our team will be covering what it means to be a team, how to differentiate between teams and groups, some of the common barriers that teams face, and identifying and analyzing some best practices that you and your teams can utilize to ensure that you reach and maintain high levels of performance. With that said, let's get started. First off, it is important to know that there is a vast difference between groups and teams. While both working styles have their benefits, what your company has requested is to know how to optimize the performance of your teams, and sometimes groups get confused as teams. Not only do teams function much differently than groups, they also have their own verb associated with high performance, teaming. In order for your company to optimize team performance, you must know exactly what a team is and how to cultivate an environment where teaming is possible. Katzenbach and Smith offer a great overview of the differences between groups and teams. While groups do have some functional advantages, the use of this style would be more for specific situations and not an environment that is aiming to maximize team performance. As you can see, the characteristics of teams are vastly different than that of groups. For example, teams are able to have higher performance than groups because they operate with shared leadership rather than to have one assigned leader. Another example you will see from a team is that the whole group is responsible for their performance rather than doling out individual responsibilities. This working style gives each member of the team more incentive to work together because they are all responsible for their outcomes. Now that we understand what a team is, let's dive into the act of teaming and how it can help your employees maximize their performance. Teaming is the actions and work that teams do and is based on the mindset of the group. Edmondson describes teaming and teamwork is on the fly and is exercised by those who work in fast-paced environments that require flexibility. You want to know about this and encourage your employees to practice teaming because it is the backbone of organizational learning. If your organization cultivates an environment where organizational learning is a priority, then new ideas and innovation will flow more freely. Your people will not be afraid to ask questions, share information with, and help each other, experiment with new ideas, discuss mistakes and improve upon them, or seek out feedback for the work they have done. These actions are important to teams because it is what will enable them to process new information and to quickly adapt. If your company makes teaming the foundation of your work and the leaders build upon that by encouraging their teams to engage in collective learning, then in turn, they will also be able to implement execution as learning. This is where the teams can begin to learn as they are working, adapting quickly to mistakes and growing in their knowledge of the tasks before them. Now that we have a better understanding of what teams are, I will turn it over to Whitney and she will share with you some common barriers that traditional face-to-face teams encounter and some insight as to how those can be conquered.
Barriers, boundaries, and challenges with face-to-face teams. Common barriers, boundaries, and challenges. Face-to-face teams, while viewed as the standard and historical norm for workplace teams, still encounter barriers, boundaries, and challenges that can make teaming difficult. For instance, in face-to-face teams, one barrier that must be overcome is the tendency to favor one's own group over others, while also viewing the collective knowledge of one's own group as overly important. This can be damaging because of the short-sightedness that it causes for groups and the limiting nature it has when considering the necessity of learning from and collaborating with other groups. Another challenge that face-to-face teams must overcome is the concept of groupthink. Groupthink references cohesion, harmony, and agreement in a group. While this sounds ideal, it's actually a dangerous place to be as a group because of the fact that it reduces the chances that a team member will disagree with someone or something, therefore limiting the opportunities for innovation and collaborative breakthroughs. A third challenge that face-to-face teams face is the issue of hierarchy. This is oftentimes a sensitive variable to work around simply because today's employees still have a sense of fear and intimidation instilled in them regarding their superiors. Employees tend to stay away from situations that carry some type of risk for their career, such as challenging a superior about an idea, disagreeing with a superior, or shedding light on poor decisions made by a superior. This hesitation brought on by fear might result in incomplete execution of tasks or team members not fully participating in teaming and, therefore, limiting the collaboration potential. A fourth barrier that face-to-face teams must overcome is interpersonal conflict. When people work together within close proximity for any amount of time, there will undoubtedly be challenges due to personality conflict, egos, and offenses, whether intentional or unintentional. All of these challenges can hinder work, collaboration, and progress. Interpersonal conflict can challenge the effectiveness of team processes. Conflict is inevitable in teams. However, conflict should be centered on task ideas rather than personal matters. A fifth challenge that face-to-face teams must overcome is a lack of psychological safety. Psychological safety allows group members the necessary safety and security to offer difficult feedback and have hard conversations without the fear of interpersonal issues, image risks, or career perils. Oftentimes, people are more reserved in face-to-face situations when it comes to offering input with negative connotations. However, psychological safety is key for an environment that is conducive to encouraging employee input and group communication. Finally, cultural barriers are often a difficulty with face-to-face teams. The main differences across culture in the workplace tend to be trouble with fluency, language barriers or understanding accents, attitudes regarding hierarchies, and different methods, policies, and procedures for making decisions. Face-to-face teams must learn how to adapt or intervene when necessary in order to embrace cultural barriers. These differences should not be barriers that stop teams from learning from and collaborating with culturally diverse groups. Barriers and boundaries must be overcome for effective knowledge sharing, information sharing, and collaboration, especially in today's fast-moving and globalizing work environment.
Hi, this is Michelle Nabon, and I'm going to talk to you about the challenges faced by virtual teams. Virtual teams are made of people who bring diverse expertise, skills, perspectives, and goals that require strong oversight, leadership, and management. For virtual teams, small problems can turn into big problems quickly. Failing to establish urgency, forgetting to check performance standards, failing to provide direction or vision, forgetting to spend time together as a team, lacking team recognition and reward are all pieces of the puzzle that could hurt virtual team performance. The 5 challenges that our executive board needs to address will be geography or physical distance, communication, technology, leadership, and conflict. Geography and physical distance. dictate the necessity for virtual teams. Edmondson in 2012 calls this distance boundaries. Virtual teams must overcome boundaries including different time zones and distance, but also the political environment, economic issues, and cultural issues. Laying out a course of action for the team requires high-quality planning when dealing with culture, team control and hierarchy, as well as institutional and political issues. Virtual teams wrestle with scheduling because it takes more time to organize and plan meetings, and this causes stress when deadlines approach. Lack of planning to overcome geographical boundaries is detrimental to virtual teams. Communication affects teaming. Virtual teams struggle to feel like a team due to a lack of social interaction. Working friendships are harder to create and maintain in a virtual setting. Feeling isolated and demotivated is common when there is no social interaction among team members. Not being able to see facial expressions during conversations leaves team members unable to understand the emotional needs of their teammates. Personalities of team members are harder to read when using a virtual team. They struggle because online communication tools do not favor visual communication. Feedback is an integral part of communicating, and giving virtual feedback is a challenge. Team members need to come to a consensus on the preferred communication method for keeping in touch and for following up on ideas and comments. Body language and nonverbal communication matters when using cameras, so the team members can see hand gestures and other nonverbal cues and reactions. Appropriate feedback builds trust. Not establishing a virtual sense of community and failure to set communication norms can keep a virtual team from operating at maximum capacity. Computer-mediated communication is a defining characteristic of a virtual team, and it can occur through video conferencing, phone, email, blogs, instant messaging, and text messaging. Technology sets the standard for team communication processes and practices. Virtual team members must recognize and develop technological competence. Team members' perceptions and meanings attached to technology can lead to a mixed understanding of roles and expected behavior. Virtual teams need to match technology to their communication needs and ensure that it has the right properties and functions without issues of attitude and perception related to that technology. Team members must have technological competence and understand the full functionality of a dynamic tool to be successful. Everyone must understand technical language and must understand the chat feature, how to speak up in a meeting, how to ask questions, and how to share files. Research on leadership in virtual teaming needs to continue and grow. Team leaders may have to change their leadership style to meet the needs of virtual teams. With team members dispersed in virtual teams, it makes it challenging to communicate personally and directly. This makes cultural issues go unnoticed until it's too late. Virtual teams leadership need to schedule sufficient time in their day for a virtual walk-around to the entire team through calls, emails, or even online visits. Virtual team members' personalities should match the needs of the team. Otherwise, virtual teamwork could make team members miserable. Potentially, some team members are not psychologically suited to work entirely in a virtual space. Culture, age, and mindset are all things to consider when forming a virtual team. Teaching team members on a virtual team to reflect on their team process and to analyze how members work together can improve teamwork. Conflict is problematic on virtual teams due to ambiguity in task, role, and responsibility. Conflict management strategies are essential. Virtual teams struggle more than when there is a person with an abrasive personality due to the challenge of working online. Individual boundaries that may impede collaboration include gender, age, ethnic background, native language, ethical standards, history with virtual teams, assumptions, values, biases, goals, and styles. Conflict must be immediately confronted for virtual teams to be successful. After discussing the challenges and barriers for face-to-face and virtual teams, we now move to Cameron to talk about the best practices for high-performing face-to-face teams.
As you already know, there are two different types of teams, face-to-face teams and virtual teams. Whitney and Michelle have already discussed the common barriers that each of those face. Now let's discuss best practices specifically for face-to-face teams. It is important for us to realize that the goal of a team is to work together to find some solution to some problem or to generate some new idea. Hill and Lineback state that effective communication is the key to teamwork, and that once you have established effective communication, that ideas can generate, and it will lead the team to discover solutions to problems that are there or problems they didn't even know existed. And communication, in the end, is what causes teams to achieve their goals. It's important to realize that the things that contribute to making your face-to-face team successful are really just things that enable open communication to occur. I'm sure you all have, because I know I have. I've been on a team before, and I get into the room and I look around and I'm thinking, who are all these people? Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Not ever even thinking that somebody might have actually thought the same thing about me. The first thing that leaders can do, in particularly, which we'll talk more about later, is to define the team member roles. Define that. Edmondson states that upfront delegation allows progress to be made sooner. It just happens this way. Additionally, Erickson tells us that when people know who's on their team and they know what to expect, it eliminates this time period, this little transition of interpersonal power struggles. People are trying to get their ego out there. This person needs to know that I've done this, or this person needs to know that I have done this. It eliminates that, and it lets the work begin to happen sooner. Leaders can contribute to the success of this initial teaming stage by introducing the team to each other. Then compliment each person. And by compliment, I mean describe a few of the accomplishments. Get the ego part out of the way. Take care of the interpersonal struggle right here. The leader doing that eliminates it from needing to happen later. Then let everybody know that each person's area of expertise. The team should be made up of diverse skill sets. Let people know what each person brings to the table. Finally, let the team know what each member will be contributing for their success. The next question I pose to you is, do we have what we need? Do we have what we need as a team to be successful? Kotu states that there are several things a team needs. The first thing is a common purpose. A common purpose allows a team to work together with the idea that they're going to attain some goal that they've all agreed upon. The next thing is that work that they do really needs to be centered around teamwork itself. And what I mean by that is if there's a menial task that somebody could accomplish by themselves in 5 minutes, 30 minutes, even a day, then don't call the team in to come do it. If the work doesn't require a team, don't use it. Find projects that you can use a team for, and then you'll see their effectiveness. Lastly, Organizational structures must support teaming. Here's a couple examples. The first thing is technology. Organizations must have the technology where teams can be successful. If they need a conference room, if they need a collaborative computer system where they can compile their things, such as Google Drive, something like that. The last thing I want to talk about in regards to organizational structures is that reward systems must be set up in a way that boosts teamwork. If we're going to foster a teaming environment, then we have to reward the team as a whole. If we begin to reward individuals, what's going to happen is people are going to begin working on their own agendas, where the team is in the background, but the ulterior motive is to accomplish and succeed for themselves only. That is very important for effective teaming. Our next best practice is most crucial for success in face-to-face teams. Having a safe work environment can be the difference in meeting the status quo or innovating cutting-edge strategies that enable a company to surpass its competitors. Psychological safety is perhaps the most important component of teamwork. Psychological safety entails that employees feel comfortable speaking up and contributing without being punished or without the fear of being punished. Leaders must establish a safe workplace, and additionally, they must maintain it over time. Edmondson states that maintaining that safe work environment will ensure long-term success. You have to do that. You may not establish it and then let it go unmaintained. It must be consistent. And as that consistency reigns, and as people are held accountable, employees will speak up, they will contribute, and together they will succeed. This leads me to my final question for discussion. Can we work together? Can we work together even in times of tension, conflict, high stress, and pressure? Is that possible? Whether we're thinking about TAM's green zone and red zone, or Edmondson's hot and cool way to diffuse tension, Eisenhardt, Conway, and Bergius tell us that we must set aside personal differences. Don't focus on our differences in our home life, our social life, our family life. Focusing on the project itself, focusing on the facts that we need to fix. What are the support systems that we can instill right now to dissolve conflict based on what we have to accomplish at work? That's a tough thing to do, but in order to do it, all team members must be empathetic, willing to understand their peers' point of views. And in that, they must be patient, calm, and be willing to listen to other people's point of views. In order for face-to-face teams to be successful, team member roles must be defined. Teams also need the resources that are crucial to being successful. Psychological safety must be established so everyone is comfortable contributing to their team's efforts. And when things get tense and conflict rises, the team must be able to resolve conflict in order to move forward and achieve their goals.
Hello, my name is Chris Elliott, and I'm going to be going over the best practices for creating high-performing virtual teams. When talking about the best practices of a virtual team, it's important to understand what exactly a virtual team is. So, Edmondson defines it as a group of individuals who work across physical and organizational boundaries through the use of technology. It's important to notate that a virtual team could be spread out across the globe, or they could be in the same city working remotely, not going into the office every day. One of the important things about a virtual team is they need to be able to coordinate member-to-member actions to ensure that the tasks are being completed on time, and also that certain members of the virtual team are not pulling all the work and one or two people are, not showing up to the meetings on time. Virtual teams sometimes meet face to face periodically, and it is recommended to build rapport and know who you're working with on a daily basis. Having good communication and technology in place for the virtual team to communicate is key for success. Communication is key because it's how the team members are able to communicate with one another since they are not in the same physical office. The ability to coordinate tasks with one another and make sure that they are getting done and being efficiently done is also really important with the timeline of getting projects done. Visiting one another to foster trust, Edmondson again hits on because it's important to know that you can count on one another, that you are able to give work to one another and know that it's going to be done correctly. The ways that people communicate with virtual teams are through video conferencing, chat, email, call, and text message. Building a culture of participation with a virtual team is one of the most important ingredients of the virtual team. If people are not participating with one another, then the projects are probably not getting completed, or it's unfair and other members are doing more of the work than others. Participation with a virtual team is similar to being face-to-face. When you launch a meeting, it requires also everyone to be present, even though they might physically not be in the same location. It's important to know who's on the team and then also understanding the work of the team members that each person is responsible for. Staying in your own lane and making sure that you're doing your own job are some of the key things that a virtual team needs to understand about the team members that are on the team, and also why each person is on the team and understanding the key larger picture of what is trying to be accomplished. The size of the team impacts success as well. 2 to 25 people is what's typically ideal for a team. And then also collaborative culture, so cooperation doesn't decline, is necessary as well. There has to be time zones that are recognized, having meetings maybe early in the morning or in the evening time, so people are able to all be accommodated with whatever time zone they're on, and also physical location as well.